Gold and silver are continuing to do well, and there's an election coming, and is that going to change everything? Plus, McDonald's, President Trump, the E. coli, and a new letter that came out Wednesday from Senator Lizzie Warren. She sent a note to McDonald's. I wonder what it says. Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital Management, joins us. KnowYourRiskRadio.com. Thank you, God Almighty, for this and for the new intro.
The Todd Herman Show is 100% disapproved by big pharma, technocrats, and tyrants everywhere. No. From the high mountains of free America, here's the Emerald City exile, Todd Herman.
Today is the day the Lord has made, and these are the times to which God has decided we shall live. Zach Abraham, my friend and brother, joins us, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital Management. Zach, great to have you back.
Good to be back. Always fun to be back.
Got me a letter here from Lizzie Warren. She's a senator, and she's for the little people. This just came out. Zach, you know her?
I call her Captain Freedom. Yeah.
Well, who could blame her? She has a zeal for freedom, having grown up on an Indian reservation, Cherokee Nation. Nation. She writes to the CEO of McDonald's. This note came out on October 21st. That's interesting. Gosh, there might be a reason for this. We write with concern regarding increases in fast food prices over the last several years and seeking information regarding McDonald's pricing decisions. While McDonald's is not the only fast food restaurant that's increased prices significantly in recent years, its dominant market position as the largest fast food chain in the United States has an outsized impact on American consumers. While working families are trying to make ends meet, McDonald's and its corporate counterparts have continued to grow their profits. And the note continues with some kind of overtones of, that's a super nice series of restaurants. It'd be a shame if it got burned down from folks in Washington, D.C. Any idea why this became a focus of Lizzie Warren? Just as can we brainstorm?
We can certainly brainstorm. I can tell you what letter I would write back to her. I'm dead serious. I think it'd be hilarious. I'd be like,
okay, what would you say?
Well, Senator Warren, it's interesting. Bit of a coincidence that you're writing me, because I was about ready to write you and ask you, could you please explain to me the explosion in federal debt and deficits that has caused us to increase our cost of labor by about double in the last 3 years? And if you can answer that question, then I can very accurately answer your question. Can you please tell me why prices have risen? You're like, well, I'm sitting here in Washington State. What is the price of minimum wage done here in the last 3 years? Has it gone from like 12 to 18? Hey, just spitballing. Maybe that's got something to do with it, right? Like,
I find you in contempt of the Senate, sir. I find you in contempt of the Senate, and down into the jailhouse you'll go. Yeah. She's also, of course, the lady who breathed into existence the Consumer Fraud Protection Bureau that the Supreme Court's magically and insanely decided is constitutional. Do you know how they fund themselves?
No, I don't, actually.
It ain't through Congress.
How is it?
Oh, it's a beautiful business model. They sue businesses.
Oh.
They fine businesses.
Just like the IRS.
Right. And guess who can't fire the executive director of the Consumer Fraud Protection Bureau?
The president.
Right.
Oh, wow. How do they get appointed? It's like the Federal Reserve?
They get appointed, and then it's kind of a lifetime thing. You just keep your deal going, and you're self-funding.
There's got to be a way that he can undercut it. There's got to be a way.
Oh, no, President Trump undid the thing. And then the Democrats took it to court, and John Roberts, Supreme Court, said, yeah, this is good.
Oh, wow.
It's fine to have a government entity that funds it.
I kind of feel like John Roberts, and maybe I'm being too hard on this, but I feel like John Roberts was like David Souter, like repackaged. What I don't want to get it mixed up. Wasn't Souter the Reagan appointee?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna forget. I don't know. Can I tell you what I think of John Roberts? Where I think he's at is I think that John Roberts does everything he possibly can in his mind to uphold the independence of the Supreme Court. So he is extra. he gives extra leeway to the executive branches, and he says all this has to happen through Congress, except for one thing. If it's good for pharma, it's good for John Roberts. Across the board. Always, always, always. You looked it up. Did you look up David Souter?
Yeah, a little bit of irony here.
Okay.
So David Souter was appointed by H.W. Bush. Roberts was appointed by W.
I don't know that that's irony as much as that's a very, very clear connection to something. One of the things we need to talk about with McDonald's, and this has to do with the food itself, and interesting, once again, timing. And we're about to talk about a product that has some protein in it, though it's a large grit of fat. I want to give you guys an opportunity to get more nutrition for every bite of protein you consume, be it in whey protein, fish, chicken, and in these inflationary times, why wouldn't you want that? Masszymes from Bioptimizers have been shown in a test, Birch International University in Bosnia, side-by-side test. Normal citizens eating beef and et cetera and normal food. Okay, great. And then people like me who take Masszymes. We, the lucky group, we got 1,200% more amino acids in our bodies than the control group, right? Now, I wasn't in the test, but I do take Masszymes, and I take it pretty religiously. You can do the same thing. Go to bioptimizers.com/Todd, get 10% off all their products, including Masszymes, and stop letting poor digestion rob you of your full potential. And also, just get more nutrition for every single chew. Bioptimizers.com/Todd. You saw the news, Zach, bunch of E. coli floating around McDonald's. And again, it's weird. We had the letter from Lizzie Warren, and then we had the CDC coming out and saying we got this E. coli breakout in McDonald's, and their stock took a nosedive down, 9.81% yesterday. And again, I'm looking at this. Now, maybe it's that the onions, McDonald's thinks the onions might have had the E. coli. But the timing on this, right after the Lizzie Warren letter, the President Trump going and being at McDonald's, I'm sorry. I don't like to engage in conspiracies. In fact, I refuse to do it. I utterly refuse to speak conspiracy at all. But this timing stinks.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it is for the McDonald's shareholder.
I mean, yeah, we can believe that Trump is well. I mean, I don't think I haven't heard an allegation. Actually, nobody's really come out and said that they think Trump's the genesis of it, have they?
Well, that's coming.
Okay, yeah.
No,
and I thought it'd be perfect that we can blame an ex-president for an E. coli breakout at McDonald's, but we're racist for believing that COVID came from the Wuhan lab.
Right.
Like, I mean, that would be on brand. That would be really on brand.
Totally on brand. In fact, I'm surprised we don't yet have the accusation that President Trump caused this, that he probably had dirty fingers that made it through the McDonald's supply chain. Next thing you know, now the fact is people have died, the CDC's saying, and they're saying it came from McDonald's. And weird, I mean, it's very sad that people died, obviously. But it's odd that I don't trust the CDC on this, that I think they could possibly have politicized this. So weird.
You know what? You know what is interesting that I was actually speaking to a client about this morning, and I just saw a tweet about it from Glenn Beck. I'm kind of hijacking, going in a different direction, but along the same lines. Glenn Beck had some interesting comments that his head of security told him. Did you read about this?
People mentioned this to me, but I've not yet seen it. What was it?
He said that he didn't go in and elaborate. Maybe he has before, but he said that he just has like very, very good security, like some of the best in the world. So I'm thinking probably ex-SEAL would be my guess. Ex-SEAL guys that Beck's hired.
Sure.
And I guess one of the guys told him after the Trump got clipped in the ear, he just said, and I haven't gone through and read it thoroughly, but he intimated that the security there was a complete joke, and he was concerned that Trump wouldn't make it till January 20th.
Yes, I have heard this because the clownish security.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but that really, that I hadn't really thought about it in those terms. I had at certain times. That would be that would be awful on a lot of levels, man. I don't, and here's the thing, you can't rule it out. You know what I mean?
But I don't. It is my contention.
Oh, I know you don't. Yeah.
No, it's my contention that they're saying let a couple through. We're not saying we're going to assassinate him. We're not doing the killing. We're just gonna like let a couple through, let that guy stay in hidden over there for 12 hours. 12 hours where all the photographers hide, the paparazzi hide. Let the kid on the rooftop, let him be out there with his rangefinder. He's up there a half hour ahead of time. Don't shoot him. Like he's obviously a threat. Don't shoot him. That's letting one through. And I better believe they would let one through again.
Yeah, and here's the for people that don't really have a context for this to understand, and they're like, "Oh, what do you mean to do?" You're like, anybody that understands anything about you know what? You don't even need to know a lot about firearms. Just go watch. There's several different movies you could watch. You could watch Sniper with Tom Berenger. You could watch In the Line of Duty with Clint Eastwood when he played a Secret Service officer. You could watch some of the what was the name of the book? There were several. It was a big series. They made a movie called Shooter after it. It was Mark Wahlberg played the guy.
Oh, yeah. John Lee. It was like John Lee Hooker or something, but he had
John Lee Bob.
Yeah,
something like that, right? Anyway, or Jim Lee. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, you got it. So anyway, but you just go watch one of those, and then go back and watch the coverage of and realize how insane. Look, what I know is this. What I know is just the basic, like rudimentary Secret Service sweep would have disallowed that to happen. Right? That wasn't a miss. You cannot miss and leave a wide open shooting platform 130 yards from the podium. That for anybody that knows anything about that, at the very least, they should be like, okay, was somebody stoned? Was somebody drunk? Did somebody not show up on duty? Like if this wasn't purposeful, there must be an explanation.
Now, and I've been through it and through it. When he was shot in the ear, you had 3 agents up in the building across from the rooftop. So they could have thrown a knife into the neck of the guy that was that close. Yeah. Agent number 1 called in sick. I can't come. I'm sick. Okay. So there's 2 agents. Agent number 2 needs to pee. So he has to leave the building to pee. And then he forgot his card key. So agent number 3 has to go down to get agent number 2. And lo and behold, there's the rooftop that's open. And
because that's perfectly normal protocol for a Secret Service sniper to leave his post to go open a door for another one.
Or to pee.
Are you joking?
Or to pee. No, you know what?
They pee their pants.
They pee your pants. You pee in a wastebasket.
Yeah.
And then there's this one. This is how you prove it. So you're on the site visit. You're looking around.
I just wondered, do we want to have a high ground?
No.
Okay, because we got the water tower here.
Yeah, we don't want that.
Yeah. All right, so we don't want oversight. We don't want to have the highest possible ground where no one can be above us and we can see everything below us.
No, we're good.
No.
Right. That's where this all falls apart. It's like Jim Cramer is running this thing. It's like,
this, and I mean this 100%. Had they had you and I, now look, there's no way we would have done anywhere near as the job that a forward Secret Service team would do. But had they had you and I as head of Secret Service or security that day, that guy never would have been there. I mean, period. It was simple.
Right. The guy has a rangefinder. He's not supposed to be here. And plus, we're going to be up on the roof. And hey, why are you taking that ladder up there with that case in your hand when there's a former president speaking? Maybe you're going to shoot him. There's a reason I'm mentioning Jim Cramer, because I watch how clever this is in a second here, Zach. This is going to amaze you. Now, remember I said this is like Jim Cramer's running the Secret Service, okay? Watch this and watch what I do here in just a second. You guys, this is how you do a transition. Now, this one's hard, okay, because I got to talk about something that's a bit of a hard transition, but Jim Cramer would probably hate this company because they're small and made in America, and they use family recipes for soap. This isn't the good transition. This is the one that I said would be hard. So I'm talking about Allen Soaps. Hey, the holidays are coming. Do this and just go buy Allen Soaps for any family that has a kid who's been born with autism or Down syndrome, because something happens to parents. They look and they say, this is it. My dreams need to change. I need to change how I imagine the future for my child. So, and that can be really, really, really a struggle. Buy Allen Soaps, made in America, all natural ingredients, and they employ Alan, they employ Ian, and this other young lady, I've not met yet her, so I have trouble remembering her name. She got autism late in life. The soap is the highest possible quality. You won't get more quality soap. The mission is the highest. It's all lives matter because all lives are made by God. You'll get a collector's card, a trading card with Alan and maybe Ian on it. So these families can celebrate, oh yes, there are things our kids can do. They can live a life where they have the dignity of work. It really does mean something to them. It's allensoaps.com/Todd. Get 10% off all their products there. allensoaps.com/Todd. And yeah, Jim Cramer would hate that company. Maybe. And here's the thing about Jim Cramer, Zach, and this is where I wanted to ask you something financial. You handle our money. You know, we've got the land. You do the money. Jim Cramer says, do not panic over hired bond yields. So we need out of bonds.
Let's put it this way.
Okay.
Jim says not to worry about it. Stan Druckenmiller and Paul Tudor Jones are short bonds, so they're betting against them. If Jim's on one side of the argument and those two are on the other, I'm going to side with them every single time.
Right.
Okay. I mean, that'd be like, my son pitching to Ken Griffey Jr. Right. Like, right. I mean, theoretically he could strike him out. I'm going to bet pretty strongly that's not going to happen. That being said, I think that the trajectory of bonds, at least in the short term, is probably lower, meaning I would expect the long end of the curve to slightly drift upwards as inflation expectations start coming back into play. That being said, I think if you really start to see bonds go the other way, if they catch a bid, meaning rates start going down on those bonds, I think that's something you're going to have to pay attention to, because that would signal to me that the market or people in the market are sniffing something out that we're not, which is if somebody, oh man, I don't like it either way. So those guys can have I think that there are much easier plays in the market right now, meaning I wish you could make a concise. I mean, I think the trend of yields is probably higher. I also wouldn't be surprised at all to see him chopping up and down for a while. I just think it's a really hard play. I mean, if you took us back to when the 10-year yield popped above 5%, I thought that'd be the ceiling. That ended up being the ceiling. And that seemed like a logical level on so many different areas, right? A, it was a round number, which why markets care about that, I don't know, but they typically do. And then B, the other big tell was that's right at the level when Silicon Valley Bank rolled over, right? So you're like, okay, I kind of think that we just saw the stress point, the break point for the system. So highs on yields are probably in. You look at it today, and there's no way to know where you're at, right? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you told me the 10-year yield was 3.25 a year from now, or you told me it was 5.1 a year from now. Sure, right?
So don't go all in on bonds either way. It sounds like we need to do this thing. I've heard this thing where there's some people who buy more than one stock, and they'll sort of spread their bets in sort of a risk management model. I don't know if you've heard of that. It sounds really risky, like just having all sorts of bets and hedges upon hedges, and ways to make money on inflation and not inflation. And I mean, it sounds like a lot of work I don't want to do, but that's what you do.
Yeah, it almost sounds like diversification,
right? In a very intense way.
Yeah, well, here's the other thing too, man, and this is a really unpopular topic to bring up, but I know that you don't really know that I don't really shy away from that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
One of the really interesting things that has happened is in the last 10 years, the annuity space. It's not for everybody. First of all, we've talked about this a lot, but for those people out there that are looking for a very safe investment, that are more concerned about the return of their investment as opposed to the return on their investment. I want to be very clear. This type of investment is not going to perform like an equity portfolio. It's not going to outperform the market over an extended period of time. But there are a lot of investors out there that aren't willing to take market risk, or maybe they don't even need to take market risk, right? They just want a realistic shot at outpacing inflation. Because of the really low interest rates, there have been a lot of really interesting innovations in the annuity space over the last 10 to 12 years. And now that rates have gone up, there's some products out there that are structured in such a way where they're insured against loss. They have no fee, and that's not a catch, right? It just, like, when I say that, I mean, it's truly, they don't have a fee and you're insured against loss. You're backed up by the state you live in if the company were to go out of balance. So it's on balance, it's about as safe as a CD, but it indexes you to the market. And what's really compelling about them is that higher interest rates have gone, the more juice they've given you to the upside of the market. So we've sat here and watched these things that are insured against loss, that have no fee, in the last 4 years put up 8-9% a year.
Wow.
Yeah, which is wild, right? Now, not all of the product. You have to have bought them since rates went up, and rates obviously were much lower, or excuse me, were much lower 4 years ago. But I'm saying, like, so if you took the same product, built the same way it was today, and bought it 4 years ago, it would have gone up, on average around 8-9% a year. And it really is fascinating because when reason I bring it up is because of the bonds issue. It's something that, we started owning bonds for the first time in over a decade, probably a year ago when rates peaked. That's the first time we got back into bonds.
Yeah.
And I thought we were going to push a lot more back into bonds until I saw these products come out, and you're looking at it and going, okay, we're buying bonds for safety. This is safer. It's insured against loss. And look at all this juice it's giving you to the upside. So anyway, I just thought that was really fascinating that people should know about, because if you're one of those people, like, you do not just go out and buy any annuity. I'm not telling you that. I'm not telling you need to do it through us. I'm not even shopping them. I'm saying, for those of you out there that are looking for conservative investment alternatives that can give you a realistic shot to outperform inflation, there are some really compelling products in the annuity space right now that I don't think are getting paid a lot of attention.
Good. No, that's the sort of tips I think people really appreciate. We need to talk about the election that's coming up, and we need to talk about Kamala and Trump, two obviously different approaches. One person is, according to The Atlantic, this is an actual news article. Someone said this, or opinion piece. This is in The Atlantic. A listener or viewer sent this to me, Ruben, sent it to me. He said, I'm not used to hearing you quoted in the liberal media. This is from The Atlantic. This is a real piece. It made it through editorial review. Jeffrey Goldberg. This is the headline. Trump is literally Hitler. Donald J. Trump is the reincarnation of Adolf Hitler. This isn't suggesting that he's Hitler-like or reads Mein Kampf. He's literally Hitler. And on the other hand, Kamala Harris is a phenomenal servant of the Lord Jesus. And her tax plan is very Jesus-like. So we'll talk about that with Zach, and then gold and silver. And if we get to it, I do want to talk about Bill Gates going all in on digital ID, because I think that's very, very important as well. You have an opportunity to go all in on not giving in to fear or pushing from big pharma. If you are my age, I'm 57, you're probably going to have a surgery at some time. You are. I've had 2 shoulder surgeries and a sinus surgery. Please don't come and say that's because you do CrossFit. No, it's not. My uncles are sedentary people largely. They both had shoulder surgeries, rotator cuff from the same bone spurs I have, because it's genetic. You're probably going to face that. I've got 3 friends. One had to have surgery. I've got 2 friends looking at surgery. Both of them now are consulting with Renew.healthcare. RENUE.healthcare. Why are they doing this? Because number one of them watches and listens to the cast. When he found out he needed to have surgery, he called me and said, hey, brother, what's that place you talk about? Renew, RENUE.healthcare. And he did that thing that a lot of people do, even dear friends. Okay, so 1-to-1 as friends, not on the show. Dude, I would never say anything to the audience. I wouldn't say to you, they're fantastic. So they're both going there in hopes that they don't have to get operated on. And if they don't, then think about this. No cutting, no risk, no infection, no downtime. Worthwhile 4 or 5 days in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. The stem cells themselves. They said, you're sure I can get the stem cells that haven't touched COVID? Yes. That strain is still there. That's what I use. It was started before those injections came out. Yes. And they're going to take care of my wife there too. Yes, they do a lot of aesthetic work, far better than Botox. If your wife is into Botox, get her off the Botox into the stem cells, then the sourcing of the stem cells. Always from umbilical cords and placentas, period. And their capacity to rebuild muscle, tendon, cartilage is just unmatched. You can go see if you can avoid the surgery and heal in a couple of weeks versus like 48 days it took me to even get a push-up back. when I didn't use stem cells. Go to renew.healthcare, RENUE.healthcare. That's RENUE.healthcare. Elevate your quality of life by having actual healthcare, RENUE.healthcare. So, Zach, President Trump has a tax plan that he says, and his plan is he wants to get 93.2 million Americans off the hook for at least part of their income taxes. So, eliminating tax on tips, we know about that. Stop taxing Social Security benefits. And he would like to create some exemptions for firefighters, police, military personnel. And he says he can replace these revenues with tariffs, which we can talk about. So, first of all, I know that's a minor outline on this. Can we start by agreeing that taxing Social Security is offensive, perverse, and insane?
Yeah, it's the height of idiocy.
Right, because it was forced out of your paycheck. You could have invested it better on your own, but let's tax the tax that you were forced to pay. Of all the things he's talking about here, what makes the biggest bump to the economy and/or is the most fair in your mind? You got the tax on tips, waivers for firefighters, police, military personnel. Which one creates the biggest juice or the biggest benefits to the economy, but which one do you think is best for human beings?
I think all of those, I think that all of them make sense. And I think that all of those proposals are probably, let me think here. I bet you they're probably on balance around the same level of impact, right? Like which isn't unbelievable, but all of it is beneficial.
Yeah.
The only issue I have is to say you're going to fund it with tariffs is a complete misnomer because the increased cost of tariffs gets passed directly to the consumer. So
let's talk about that because I have had that point of view most of my life. But let me just give you this case, this scenario where you have, let's say, John Deere, they're saying we're going to move our big plants overseas. That's where we're going to make our tractors now. Trump says I'm going to put a 40% tariff on that. All right, so let's say he does that. Does another tractor brand making tractors in the United States not have an opportunity to say our tractors are just as good and 40% less? So do they not have a chance to say, don't pay the tax with us, don't pay the tariff with us? Isn't there a chance to use competition so that, yeah, people who are completely committed to John Deere, they're going to pay that tax, that tariff. But other people given the choice, no, you know what? I guess I will try the Husqvarna.
Yeah, no. And like I've said, I you're never going to hear me, issue a blanket derision of tariffs. I do think that they have their place.
Okay.
But I don't even think necessarily and I don't even like to say this, but I don't even think necessarily they should be used that way. I don't think they should be used even to punish other companies that go outside. I think that what you should do in that scenario is you should give special taxation and set up special things for manufacturers that do build here, right? Special exemptions on maybe property tax, whatever. There could be a whole slew of things that you could do without having to issue tariffs. Now, if those tariffs are in response to a government, like for instance, if let's say Caterpillar was doing that exact same switch and going to a Chinese corporation, and let's say that, and I don't know I don't know the ins and outs of the Chinese tariffs that they use on us, but let's say they were tariffing our tractors going into China, then 100%, right? Like that's, again, like I've told you, that's not free trade. That's not free trade. And I go, no, that's called fair trade, right? Like if one side is tariffing, then to answer with tariffs that are of the equal magnitude, it makes all the sense in the world. Otherwise, you're just literally giving it away.
Right.
So I'm not at all saying it's not, but what I am saying is to summarily sit there and say that via tariffs and not stipulating that those tariffs would be on another country that also had similar tariffs levied against us, to sit there and say that we will pay for it via tariffs, that you won't. You may be able to pay for it or partly compensate it for residual impacts of the tariffs. Like you said, the competitive edge it will give U.S. that one company, Husqvarna in the United States, the additional people that will retain their jobs there or get jobs because of increased demand, those people paying income taxes, right? It could have a residual impact that neutralized the potential cost or even made the tariffs overall profitable. But if your statement is we'll pay for it via tariffs, no, you won't. I mean, Yeah.
Okay, you know how they could pay for it? If President Trump makes it past the attempt to rig and steal the election, and he is in office, and he wins, I mean, obviously wins, but makes it through that stuff. If he does bring Elon Musk in, and Musk actually is brought in to create efficiencies in government, and he makes it through all the lawsuits of you can't fire, these are career civil servants, and you can't change our jobs. And if Musk actually does it, you could make up this money in a couple of years of actually going through Washington, D.C. You could fire every third person in Washington, D.C. and no one would notice.
No, I think I think that's a very, very hard thing to argue isn't the case. I've heard Vivek Ramaswamy claim that you could fire 75%. That seems a bit aggressive to me. And here, Chase Taylor, our head of research, always reminds me of this because he worked in Army intelligence. And he goes, Zach, I understand. And he goes, I could tell you stories about people misusing government funds and the inefficiency of government that would just boil your brain. And he goes, but you also have to remember that there are a lot of people in government that are very disciplined, very dedicated.
Yep.
He goes, especially on the military side, especially on the intelligence side that he worked on. And so, I think we need to be important. I think if you look at it department by department, I think that there are entire departments you could get away with, and not only would it not hurt you, it'd probably be a benefit. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. You could just go to one central accounting team. Not every department of government needs its own accountant and its own inspector general and its own court system. They don't need their own court systems to begin with. There shouldn't be an IRS court.
No.
There shouldn't be a DEA court. There's courts. You don't need to have your own courts. I mean, there's so much duplication, and this is very much on purpose. All right, so we've got this. We've got Bank of America sees gold breaking 3,000 sooner rather than later. We need to talk about that in silver. But in a second, I want to shift gears and talk about Kamala Harris and what you see coming out of that. I mean, President Trump clearly is making these promises to cut taxes. If Kamala Harris is either elected, which I cannot fathom, or succeeds in stealing this thing, what does that look like? We'll talk about that with Zach Abraham. Bone Frog Coffee, we've been talking about for, years, become good friends with Tim and really values friendship. They had a supply chain issue with their winery, their cellars, and then a tech issue, website issue. So we haven't been talking about the wines. And then there's this whole thing where I don't drink wine. And I make this promise that if it's something you ingest, I'm going to use it. It wouldn't be fair for me. I mean, I have nothing against people having a drink of alcohol. I don't do it. I've done it once in like 20 years. But my friends either like wine or love it. My wife likes wine. My daughter likes wine. My daughter's a massive foodie. And we have friends who adore wine. They collect it. They travel the world. And they go, whenever they go, they make sure they go to wine tastings, and they do the fancy stuff where you swish it in the glass. And they didn't spit it out at our house because I said no spitting. Because I said, if you spit that, I'm spitting food. And we'll do a food tasting thing where I'll, spit food back into the bowl. So they didn't do that, but they loved the wine. So my daughter loved it. She's, not yet even legally allowed to drink. She's just about there, legal adult. She loved it. And most importantly to me, my friend Tom gave it high reviews. And Tom is a thoughtful guy. If he didn't like it, he would have said, hey, dude, this is not good wine. And he's an Air Force vet, so he served our country. So this means a lot to me. You can try the Cabernet or the Merlot or get both of them. Know that 10% of proceeds support Navy SEAL Foundation because Tim is a retired Navy SEAL who did 3 tours, 3 deployments on our behalf, and yet comes with the Bone Frog insignia on it, which honors fallen SEALs. And of course, it says on every label, God Country Team. Go to bonefrogsellers.com/Todd. Get 10% off. The wine's there. Great for the holidays coming up, Thanksgiving, etc. bonefrogsellers.com/Todd. So President Trump's plan is pretty aggressive. 93 million people either partly off or all the way off of income taxes, which personally I would love to see. Most thing I'd like to see is doing away with the property tax, which is insane and immoral. But Kamala Harris, if she is somehow either elected or steals the office and gets in, what do you see coming out of a Kamala Harris presidency in terms of gold and silver and bonds? And what do you see coming out of someone who's going to be purely confiscatory?
Well, I mean, my anticipation is that gold and silver would do. I think gold and silver are in a position where they're probably going to do well, regardless of who's elected. But I think that you could probably pretty easily make the argument that they will do considerably better under Kamala Harris. And one of the main reasons for that is not so much her domestic policy, but I think that a Kamala Harris presidency drastically increases the odds of more geopolitical drama, if you will.
Oh gosh.
And yeah, I just think that's a very hard. It's a very hard one to argue with. So on the bond side of it, I don't really know, because here's the truth. The truth of it is, if yields on bonds start getting out of control, the Federal Reserve will step in and start buying them. So they'll buy them right back down. So it's hard for me to really know whether you'll see. I've heard a lot of big people making the argument, oh, inflation's going to perk back up, which I actually think is probably happening. It's hard to tell at the moment, but it looks like that could certainly be the case. They're like, and interest rates are going to go way higher, and yields are going to fly, and that's going to bring down this whole thing. And I look at those people and I'm like, where have you been for the last 15 years, man? Meaning, right, if it's something that can be fixed easily by printing more money and the Federal Reserve or the Treasury spending that printed money, it will be fixed. Pure and simple. Right? Well,
even if the fix is fake, it will be fixed.
Yeah, I mean, you live in a fractional reserve banking system, right? And our government has the sole ability of any government in the world to create out of thin air the money that runs that fractional reserve banking system. Therefore, any type, shape, form, whatever of insolvency can be fixed very simply by just replacing that liability on the balance sheet with cash, meaning the Federal Reserve or the Treasury buying that asset with printed money, right? Like any bank, well, the bank's $1 trillion in debt. Here's $1 trillion. No, they're not.
And
right?
I think Kamala is willing to have so much done through her, because she doesn't really exist, that if there's going to be a time for them to come and say, hey, look how good Democrats administrations are. We're out of debt. The banks are fine. Do it all through qualitative easing, and in that way really cement the glorious revolution. Because look, America's suddenly out of debt. Our budget is balanced. Banks are fine. And just flood the country with fake money, and look, everything's settled. And in fact, they could even have mayors of Democrat cities suddenly start enforcing laws. Yeah, we decided to enforce laws. We're going to crack down on the cartels. We're going to go ahead and stop the homeless camps. And all of a sudden you kind of America go, Kamala feels good.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that angle. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that angle. Yeah, you could. And I, like I said, it just, here's how it's all going to end story is with something else going bankrupt. I don't know what to tell you. Like last year, literally the banks, and there are some exceptions, but broadly speaking, the banks didn't see higher interest rates coming and bonds losing value. Okay. And that almost brought down the entire regional banking system.
We just said another bank failed this week.
Yeah. And you won't see it rock the system. Why? Because the minute it starts to, the Fed just cuts a check, and it takes less and less time, right? Like you and I talked about this before. That $350 billion bailout for the banks, it was the bank refinancing program, whatever it was called. That came out in a matter of like 48 hours or something like that. Yeah. Right. It didn't even have a congressional vote. Think back to when remember how controversial the TARP program was coming out of 0809. Yep. Right. We almost shut the government down over that. And the TARP program was only like 2.3 times larger than the regional bank bailout. Right. And I mean, it was just debated and consternation. That $350 billion bailout last year, that was like getting a cup of coffee. Nobody even paid attention to it. Yep. Right. So that's why I keep telling people, I go, guys, I'm not saying there's not going to be turbulence. I'm not saying there's not going to be volatility. There will be. Okay. But until they can't print money, rest assured that is how they will continue to deal with things. Why? Because it's worked so far, and it is, to them at this point, it is politically painless.
Exactly, which means that we're all living in a Jim Carrey movie. We're living in the Jim Carrey movie where the sea is fake and that beautiful sky up there, that is a green screen. And it's just like a great big Hummer Games. Wait a minute. When Katniss shot the arrow up there, the sky blanked out. That's quantitative easing. Appreciate you coming on, my brother. Always good to get wise counsel with you. And God bless you and your family. And we'll talk to you next week, God willing. Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital Management, knowyourriskradio.com. Lord, thank you for reminding us to seek wise counsel because, well, we need it. You designed us to be social beings. And also remind us that the beginning of wisdom, the very beginning of it, is to fear you properly. This is the Todd Herman Show. Please go be well, be strong, be kind. Please make every effort to walk in the light of Christ.